in Vancouver, and many British Columbians are seeking ways to express their grief, to express their solidarity with the Filipino community, to express their appreciation for that community and its culture, and to stand with them in this real moment of trial for the community. As a result, the provincial government will be declaring a provincial day of mourning on Friday. This will be a day for all British Columbians to reflect on the loss of life of innocent people, the injury to people who are only seeking to celebrate, both physical and psychic scars that are going to last for a lifetime. And it is a chance for all of us to stand together with the Filipino community, not just here in British Columbia, but around the world that's hurting right now because of the actions of this man. In addition, I want to share that we're hearing from British Columbians that this incident is bringing to light additional concerns and urgency that they have around reform of the Mental Health Act in our province. The Minister of Health and her team in the ministry will be initiating a review and modernization of the Mental Health Act in British Columbia. This is something that we have held off on doing because our Mental Health Act is currently being challenged by a group of advocates, in particular the provisions of the Mental Health Act that allow doctors to compel an individual who is mentally ill to undergo treatment. We believe those provisions are critically important. I was at Helijet and I met a woman who came up to me and said, "Thank you for fighting to save the Mental Health Act. If it wasn't for compelled treatment, I wouldn't be here at Helijet waiting for a helicopter. I was very sick and I was unable to ask for help, and my family got me into the hospital and they got me into the care I need." But she raised an important point, which is that if she didn't have that family support, she might not have gotten into the hospital, she might not have gotten that care. So we'll review the Act to make sure it's responsive, which, coupled with our work to open additional beds, 140 involuntary care beds, new hospital beds across the province, involuntary care beds for those struggling with mental health and addiction in our prisons, but also in community to make sure that those people that we see struggling, very public ways, both as a danger to themselves or to others, that they can get the care that they need and that the Act is responsive to this. This is a very difficult time. British Columbians want answers about the decision of this man to drive his car into a crowd of innocent people. He is facing 8 counts of murder. He will surely face more. There will be a criminal trial to determine his criminal culpability. And it is our sincere hope that that brings some of the answers that the community is looking for. In the event that it doesn't, because I want answers just like everybody else, we'll ensure that the answers about this incident are delivered through a full public inquiry into the events leading up to this horrific murder. With that, happy to take your questions.
Richard, go ahead.
Mayor Kinson raised concerns today in a press conference. I'm sure we have similar concerns to you yesterday when we met around not just the Mental Health Act, but the province's lack of mandatory care services for people in severe crisis and those who may pose a risk to themselves or others. So is that element part of the review of the Mental Health Act, and has the province fallen behind when it comes to expanding mandatory care?
Well, the concern of the mayor and my concern about the need for people who are struggling in our streets to get care, even if they're not able to ask for it, is exactly why I brought Dr. Daniel Vigo on, an expert in this area. Within 6 months, Dr. Vigo has assisted us in opening beds at the Surrey Pretrial Centre. In just a few weeks, we'll be opening additional beds in Maple Ridge. We've identified 2 additional sites in the province to provide regional care to individuals struggling in this way, and we're going to keep doing that work. I think it's important, though, to be clear that in the instant case of Lapu Lapu Day, we don't yet know what happened. What we have from Coastal Health is they say this individual was under treatment, he was being followed by a care team, he was compliant with his medication, there was no indication of violence. That'll be tested in the criminal trial, and ultimately perhaps in a public inquiry. But for the people that we know need additional assistance, they're causing disruption in our downtown cores, we know that people have had enough. And we know that those individuals need support too. And that's why we're opening these beds and working as quickly as we can to do it, not just in Vancouver, but across the province.
You know, when people hear the words review, they wonder, how long is this going to take? Is it just going to be more bureaucratic red tape? So what do you say to people about how quickly you can actually review the Mental Health Act, and then how quickly can you actually bring in changes?
It's the review and modernization. It's a commitment to ensure an act that was introduced and passed in the 90s is meeting the moment for today's patients, for people that need this kind of care. It's a sensitive moment for the act. Other provinces have lost a very similar challenge to the one that we face here in British Columbia around compelling people into treatment. We need those provisions. We need to be able to force people into care. That's why we're defending the act. And the sensitivity around it has led us to delay doing this modernization of the act that everybody agrees needs to happen. But I don't think we can delay it anymore. We need to bring it forward. There is some risk to it, but we're going to push ahead.
Katie, go ahead.
Premier, critics in the legislature have often said people who are even brought to the hospital because they were harmed to themselves or others are often released. So what do you envision could be a longer term getting someone who's taken to hospital or who is under review into that care? And how does that differ from the system now, what you've announced as a pretrial, which is only for individuals after they've been incarcerated?
So there's a whole series of beds that we're opening across the province. We're opening 140 additional hospital beds. These are for individuals where they attend an emergency room or they have an interaction with police. They're brought to the hospital and two doctors or doctor or registered nurse say this person needs to be held. We don't have enough of those beds. That's why we're opening 140 more. There are beds for people struggling with mental health and addiction. The first set of beds are indeed in Surrey pretrials for people who have already been arrested. But the next set of beds at Alouette don't have that requirement, and other beds won't either. But we are seeking to expand the mental health services that we have in our prisons because this is often where people end up. And if they're released by a judge, it's often in order to access care. We don't want them to release people to access care. We want them to keep them in custody until they're well enough to be safe in the broader community. So it's a bit complicated in the different sets of beds that we're opening, but I guess I would summarize it in just saying across the spectrum, regardless of why you're struggling, we are opening beds. And we're also expanding care for people that don't require that intensive level of mental health support. Counselors in schools, foundry centers for youth, other interventions including ACT teams and peer teams in community. It is a full system expansion that's underway right now.
Follow up, Katie, and then Rosa.
We talked to you yesterday and this review wasn't announced. Was it undertaken because of what Ken Sim said this morning?
No, the commitment to the Mental Health Act review and modernization is one we've wanted to do for a long time. The concern that we have around the implications for the constitutional challenge that the current act faces has delayed us in doing that work. I think where British Columbians are at and what we're hearing from British Columbians is that we need to accelerate that work, and that's what we're going to do.
Wondering, there's been criticisms that there's just a lack of resources in the province to deal with people like this individual with the Lapu Lapu who was in formerly in long-term care who didn't have the services afterwards. Do we not need to urgently provide more mental health services for people who are already in the system?
Well, there are a whole lot of politicians right now, unfortunately, who are lining up to speculate about what happened in terms of this individual making the decision to drive into a crowd. He's been criminally charged. He's going to a trial. The public will get the answers that they deserve. I want those answers. The public wants those answers. I want this guy prosecuted, convicted, and in jail. And for the answers we don't get out of the criminal process, we do a full public inquiry and get those answers. But before we throw a care team under the bus, before we say that they did something wrong in failing to identify some kind of issue, let's make sure that that's actually the case. So I ask people to reserve judgment and not speculate until we know. We will get the answers. I want the answers. British Columbians want the answers. We will get you the answers. But for the broader mental health system, without question, we need more resources. All you have to do is go to a downtown core and see people struggling in the streets. That's why we're expanding those beds. That's why we're expanding beds at hospitals, and we're going to continue to do that work. You'll find no fight from me on that. In fact, what I ask you to look to is us opening the beds and delivering that additional care that we know that British Columbians are looking to, both for the people who are struggling and for the broader safety of the community.